Hello everyone, welcome to officially the point of the clown decade where things are rapidly going to get worse before they get better. For the many of you who ended up watching my 10-hour stream covering the election, you all generally already know my thoughts on an awful lot of the results, and also you will of course know that indeed it was a Labour landslide. We'll get into detail on that first, but very first thing I want to do is thank absolutely everybody who was involved in that stream, all the guests that came on, everyone in chat who kept it lively, especially the people who became new members and the people who sent super chats, and of course a very special thank you to that crime guy who organised the quiz before we started taking a look at the results. It was very fun, it kept spirits high, and I think was definitely the best part of the stream before we all inevitably got quite depressed. So once again, thank you very much, that crime guy. Link to the stream is in the description, and if you of course enjoy the quiz that crime guy set for us, you can find more of that type of thing on his channel, link in the description of the stream. For now, we will get into the nitty-gritty of this election result and what exactly do I mean by Whitepills. So I suppose very first thing first, let's take a look at the results. Naturally, this is a Labour landslide, and so they have the biggest red bar, and the most seats at 412. Yes, this is indeed quite the landslide. This is more seats than Boris Johnson got back in 2019, and there has been a total collapse of the Conservatives, losing 251 seats, with Lib Dems making quite the surge, along with SNPs having a total disaster, but I don't really care about Scotland. We will be talking more about that when Regional Variations returns. But obviously what you're not seeing here on the BBC's election results, which to be fair they only have so much space, is the fact that Reform had quite the surge with 5 seats, which is pretty good for first-timers. In fact, it's well worth looking at the vote share, because this is the important part of this election, because an awful lot of the narrative is going to be Labour won a landslide, therefore they have a mandate to pretty much do anything that they want, and this is quite short-sighted, and as I say, probably my first white pill of this election. As I have been saying and preparing myself for, and hopefully the audience as well for the past 4 or 5 years, something like that, this decade is going to get worse. Probably the worst that we have felt in our lifetime, if you're, young enough to not have gone through the 70s. And it's just an unfortunate reality that an awful lot of people are going to have their hand be put on the stove to learn that actually policies that cause that stove to be hot and you to touch it are probably a bad idea. But anyway, as you can see from the vote share, it's a complete split in the right wing. Conservatives, yes, we are considering them right wing because they still have some wets in there. We're at 24% of the vote share, with Reform at 14%. This is obviously an unmitigated disaster for the Conservative Party. Nigel Farage was putting both barrels to the Conservatives' head and ready to pull the trigger. He was fed up with them. There was a deal made with Boris Johnson's government, with Dominic Cummings obviously at the helm of that as well, that actually the party would move to the right wing, get immigration sorted, move more to the free market, be a bit more libertarian rather than statist, and then everyone would be happy. Instead, obviously, COVID happened, everyone panicked, Boris Johnson nearly died, and everything went left-wing again. They then tried to replace her with the membership with, obviously, Liz Truss, who was obviously my favourite candidate, but obviously Britain was not ready to actually go in a decent direction, and so instead we got radical centrist Rishi Sunak, who is nothing more than a middle manager in charge, and there was just a total collapse. He didn't know what to do. He didn't seem like a serious Prime Minister. Pretty much nobody on the right wing was happy, and therefore, obviously, this has resulted in a split. Now, this means that there is 5 years to stitch this back up together, either by fully backing Reform, which I honestly would say I'm 40% thinking about doing, or completely realigning the Conservatives, inviting Reform onto the Conservative side and moving it quite far to the right, or more to the centre when it comes to the electorate. But anyway, quickly before I move on, to people who are saying that this means that we absolutely need proportional representative voting, no, we absolutely do not need that. They have that throughout Europe. All it really ends up doing is making centre-left coalitions for the rest of time. Yes, some of the right-wingers are there as a pressure valve to actually help out with trying to move the government to the right, but overall it doesn't work. First Past the Post is quite excellent at stopping extremist parties getting in. The main way they get in is effectively by being massive liars. That is exactly what Labour have been for the past few decades. But at the end of the day, first past the post is pretty good at giving Britain the government it deserves. We deserve a Labour government because the right wing can't get its head straight. Partially because post-Thatcher an awful lot of wets were let back in when really they should have been kicked out. We should have kept to the right wing, we should have kept to the free market, like Blair was pretending to be, and then we'd all be happy. But no. they panic too much, whether it's because of the bubble they're in Westminster or something like that, I can't exactly say. But the point is that no, this is not a reason to go to proportional representation. This is a reason to get the right wing to actually cooperate with each other again and smash Labour next time. 34% of the vote share, a third of voters voting for Labour, by no means is a stable government. It is going to be a very fickle electorate indeed, and it is going to be absolutely no problem whatsoever for the right wing to actually get together and end up beating Labour in 5 years. They can do it. They can absolutely do it. We just need to know which direction to go in for now. If Conservatives put a wet in charge again, just join Reform. If Conservatives put a dry in charge, join Reform or Conservative. It won't really matter because I think they will all end up under a Reform Conservative banner. Anyway, obviously, since this was an unmitigated disaster for Rishi Sunak's Conservatives, the first thing he did was resign in disgrace. Rishi Sunak has apologised to the nation following the Conservative Party's general election defeat, the worst in its parliamentary history. Accepting responsibility for the result, Mr Sunak said he heard voters' anger at his government. To the country, I would like to say first and foremost I am sorry. I have given this job my all, but you have sent a clear message that the government of the UK must change, and yours is the judgment that matters. I have heard your anger, your disappointment, and I take responsibility for this. Mr Sunak then said he would step down as party leader, adding not immediately, but once the formal arrangements for selecting my successor are in place. He's going. In fact, he is pretty much already gone. He is still an MP for now, but I would not be surprised if he gets bored in a couple of years' time and takes a better paycheck from over in America to be a middle manager of some tech company, an awful lot like Nick Clegg did. Having the legacy of leading the Tory party from one of its biggest majorities in history to one of its lowest seat shares in history has got to absolutely sting the poor man. However, this is pretty much exactly what I predicted would happen under Rishi Sunak. It's been something I've been warning about for quite some time because the man could do absolutely nothing useful in government. While the Rwanda scheme was perfectly viable in theory, the roadblocks getting in the way, absolutely nothing was being done about it. Nothing was done about the ECHR, nothing was done about the Human Rights Act. All they tried to do was put through a single piece of legislation basically announcing that Rwanda is a safe country, which it is anyway, so I don't know why the hell that needed to go through Parliament. Didn't improve anything, we ended up sending, one person over, and we had to pay him to go over. What an absolutely, frankly embarrassing legacy. Let's hope that the Tories learn their lesson from it. Anyway, when it comes to Farage, they did not quite get as many seats as many of the polls were predicting, ending up on 5 seats. That is still pretty good, by the way, for a brand new party actually trying to be a serious challenger. That's pretty good. Bear in mind, when the Labour Party first tried to challenge within Parliament, they ended up with 2 seats, and have now been the opposition party for most of the 21st and 20th century, and have ended up with huge majorities a few times in Parliament. Basically, anything can happen, and that is a white pill. 5 seats is a good start. Next time, you never know. It could be a majority, or they'll join with the Tories and win a majority there, and that's still highly successful when it comes to parliamentary politics. Anyway, Nigel Farage has promised to change politics forever after his Reform UK party won more than 4 million votes. That's another point, the vote share is massive, propelling him into Parliament for the first time. Reform UK has won 5 seats in the House of Commons with 14.3% of the vote share. Mr Farage overturned a Conservative majority of more than 25,000 to comfortably win in Clacton, Essex, a race which marked his 8th attempt to enter the Commons. The election was the first step in a mass movement across the country that would change politics forever, he told supporters. Mr Farage said the political establishment are in fear in private as to what happened last night with those results in the election. When he returned to frontline politics and took over as head of Reform in June, Mr Farage said he had 2 aims. First, get millions of votes. Well, that's done. And the second was to establish a bridgehead in Parliament. and that is done. He has many plans for the future. I'm not going to get into detail of it now because we have an awful lot to get through. The point is that to see this as anything other than a success for Farage's aims is absolutely ridiculous. You cannot expect to change parliamentary politics overnight. Farage has been slowly changing parliamentary politics for decades at this point. It is now time, as he has realised, to go for the jugular and even appoint a successor. Who that successor is going to be, I don't even think we've seen them yet. I think Farage is playing the long game here. I think he's doing very well to do so. This is absolutely a white pill for the mid-21st century in Britain. So now we're looking a bit more directly at Labour. What are their initial moves? What general direction are they taking things? What are their main takeaways from this election? Well, first things first, Sir Keir Starmer has confirmed that the Rwanda deportation scheme is dead and buried on his first full day as Prime Minister. The Labour leader said he would end the gimmick of deporting migrants arriving in the UK illegally to Rwanda. End the gimmick of deporting migrants. We deported one person, which was established by the previous Tory government. Labour campaigned on a manifesto pledge to scrap the scheme, so this was absolutely expected, which already cost around £310 million, promising a more effective approach to tackling illegal immigration to replace it, which the article doesn't go into here, but according to Sir Keir Starmer, that was effectively find the human traffickers in France and work with the French police to effectively arrest them and make sure this can't happen anymore. Now, this has generally been what the idea for the war on drugs was, and it is now easier actually to get cocaine for a 14-year-old than it is for them to buy beer. In other words, I can't see it going very well. How is that a white pill? Well, I think a thing to bear in mind is that I'm talking about white pills for look 5 years in the future. Immediately, this is getting worse, obviously. In 5 years' time, people are going to see that Labour are doing not too much good about it. This, in fact, is a plan that has been generally poo-pooed by the anti-human trafficking experts, and so if they do go through with it, if they bother at all, a lot of people will realise that no, Labour do not have the answer to this issue, which is a very large issue. Anyway, after announcing that the Rwanda scheme is finally scrapped and we're returning to common sense politics, pictures were put out of the cabinet ministers that he had chosen, along with obviously the normal PR you would see from a new government, and this ended up with political left-wing activists saying, oh, isn't it great that the grown-ups are back in charge? Which is eerily similar to what an awful lot of left-wing activists were saying about Joe Biden and his cabinet over in America, and we are now seeing quite likely a, yet again, another Trump victory. Anyway, while the picture's on screen, yes, this is generally the look of the cabinet. Worst picks, I'd say, have to be Angela Rayner, just in general. However, she is Deputy Prime Minister because that's what the Labour members wanted. While also being the Levelling Up Minister, that means an awful lot of social houses, I imagine. We have Rachel Reeves as Chancellor, which I've been covering in quite a few videos and streams recently. From what I can tell, she can't really put any policy forward because it massively risks upsetting the markets a little bit, and given how much of the attack on the Tories was Liz Truss crashed the economy by upsetting the markets a little bit, this has meant that Labour's Chancellor of the Exchequer, which she now is now pretty much paralysed. And then finally we have the other big highlight is David Lammy as Foreign Secretary, who basically hates Trump, and whose pretty much entire foreign affairs platform is effectively, oh, don't you know, I am descended from slaves, therefore we need to help absolutely every country that we have affected from there. I'm not joking, by the way, that is pretty much the first thing he said when he did his first PR stunt. I mean, listen to this.
It is the honour of my life to stand before you as Foreign Secretary, a descendant of enslaved people.
Literally the first line. The first line after the introduction. In fact, it's probably within the introduction. Did you know that I is black? Did you know that my ancestors were, I don't even know if he knows this for sure, but very likely enslaved people, as he is saying now. The language always confuses me. It's gone from, oh, I am a descendant of slaves. Oh, now it's enslaved people. God knows what it's going to be next week.
A black working class man from Tottenham.
I'd like to point out here that the Home Office has screwed up with this PR, by the way. Absolutely screwed up. If you don't know what I'm talking about already, then please look at the screen. I will give you 2 seconds to guess what the issue is with these subtitles. Okay, if you didn't get it, they've not capitalised black. This is a standard thing that a lot of leftists do. They capitalise black. Sorry, just the B in black, I should say, not the whole word. The reason for this is that because they think it's a proper noun, they see it as an actual proper identity rather than just a description. The Home Office have clearly not been up to date with this sort of thing. The Foreign Office, sorry, this is the Foreign Office. And I just find it really interesting that it is kind of proving to me that this is all down to vibes. They don't keep up properly with the way that kind of the woke agenda is supposed to go, for a lack of a better term. B has been capitalised in black for pretty much as long as I can remember doing YouTube. I noticed it as one of the very first things I did as I started looking into this sort of thing. I point out all the time, and it's now got to a point where it's weird not to see a capitalised B. In proper English, because it's a description, not a proper noun, it should be a small lowercase b. But because the wokerati see it as a proper noun, it should be capitalised. You know, they see it as a proper identity, as legitimate as, say, English, American, European, African, something like that. But no, they see black as effectively a synonym for African, and that's why they end up capitalising B, and then being iffy with if they do it with other ethnicity, other skin colours, I should say, such as, well, the obvious one, white.
This speaks to what a modern, multicultural Britain can be. Proudly internationalist, determined to deliver for working people, and committed to building a better future for us all.
I mean, that's about all I'm going to go through with this speech, but it makes it very clear where Labour are sticking their flag. It is firmly in the identity politics an awful lot of the electorate have been crying out against. It's a problem that the Tory party are still relatively stuck in. It's one that I don't think they're going to get out of unless they finally get Nigel Farage in. And failing that, as I say, I can see Farage and Reform getting more and more popular, because this sort of thing is a core of the issue of Britain. We're proudly internationalist. That's only really technically true for now, because as I say, the right wing are completely split. Hell, this was one of the lowest turnouts because no one really felt that they wanted to vote on the right wing, because they didn't feel like their vote was going to count for anything. It was basically a given that Labour were going to get in. And without the right being properly united under a Conservative or Reform, or even both their banners, then they thought, what's the point? So we're definitely in for a few years of that. Things are definitely going to get worse because of it, but as I say, they'll get better after. Anyway, back on the subject of left-wing activists, again, people like Mike Goldsworthy, who was a massive anti-Brexiteer campaigner, is saying similar things. Oh, we're going to get a competent cabinet. Why? Oh, the first thing they've done is scrap the Rwanda scheme, not really made it quite clear how they're actually going to go ahead and arrest the people in France causing the illegal migrants to come over. And David Lammy kept mentioning that he was black and proudly internationalist. Okay. Yeah, this is going to end up being a disaster. There are also examples of journalists who, obviously most of them are Labour supporting left-wing types, just making things up. Mike Butcher. Starmer has been given the nod of approval by the City, UK markets are up and sterling is up. Uncertainty in the US and France will now make the UK highly investable and may mean a rate cut. The Tories promised stability, it arrived after they were kicked out of office. So I suppose to be absolutely fair on Mike Butcher, I mean this is calling it way too early. This was called at 12 o'clock the day after the election, and this is what the FTSE 100 looked like. Yeah, it's not gone well. To be absolutely fair, instant changes in the FTSE like this, you need to kind of wait a week because these things can easily recover. But when it's clear that Starmer's in and the market's open, okay, there's a bit of a rise right at the start of the day. Throughout the day, though, it's pretty much stagnant from where it started until finally, after he's announcing his cabinet, the whole thing goes down. Under the Liz Truss premiership, obviously the media will be going, oh my god, look at this. They do not like the look of this. Everything's going to be a disaster. This is not what the markets want, but obviously they're not doing it here because, as we will quickly go through, they're all Labour activists anyway. But back to the point at hand, at 12 o'clock trying to claim, oh, the market, they've been given the nod of approval and the markets are up. This is just a total lie. And as has been the case for many years at this point, probably even a century, politics is all down to vibes. That is the only way these people can react. Does this make me feel good? It must be good. I will then make things up to explain why this is good. In his defence, though, the pound did go up over the course of the Friday, so I suppose well done for that, but when it comes to the pound, there is an awful lot more than a new Prime Minister that is interfering factors with such a statistic. As I say though, I do try to be fair with these sorts of things. Give these 2 statistics a week, we will probably see basically nothing changing, because all Starmer's government is a more openly woke version of the Tories. Economically, I don't think very much is going to change anyway. Details of that to come shortly, but one thing I really do want to go through is that, yes, these are open left-wing activists I've just talked about. I think we need to go to the mainstream to show you what people like me, the low-seaters, and many others have been talking about for quite some time, which is the not very well hidden Labour activism within the mainstream media. I think the best example of this comes straight from Sky News. I mean, this was their reaction to seeing the exit polls, which showed an early Labour landslide.
Oh, whoa. Oh my God.
Yeah, you can see.
I'm not joking when I say this, but playing that clip is genuinely probably risking this video being demonetized because it sounds like an orgy is happening. Now, I'm not being funny, but Ofcom for ages has been used as a weapon against political activism like this. Now, don't get me wrong, I can't really blame them for having an emotional reaction to something that they have been waiting for 14 years. However, what I can say is that is a clear mask slip moment. As soon as the composure's back, she is still struggling for words, trying to say, well, isn't this a very good result for Labour, while at the same time trying not to come across as someone who is very happy about that, but it is ultimately far too late. This is also not helped by the fact that when it came to newspapers, all of them obviously either endorsed Tories or Labour. There were only 2 mainstream newspapers that supported the Tories, the Daily Telegraph and the Daily Mail. Pretty much every other single mainstream newspaper supported Labour. It just goes to show really that these are the publications that are very much out of touch. Yes, I understand the argument of please vote the Tories in, please, 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 because Labour having this landslide, they're going to do what they want. Well, as I say, maybe it's time that the entirety of the UK touch the stove. We have been warning about this for, what, longer than I've been doing YouTube, certainly. Longer than I've even been right-wing, or openly right-wing, really. And we keep seeing nothing but lies against the right-wing, nothing but lies from the left-wing to say, look, this is how we're actually succeeding, when they're clearly not, and I am at an age where I can survive a bit of turbulence. But when it comes to the media, it's not just Sky News who are having this euphoric moment. Andrew Marr, a veteran BBC journalist, said this on the BBC Results Question Time special.
I think just having a stable government that will be there for 5, maybe 10 years, who knows, but with sort of ordinary, down-to-earth, serious people talking like the rest of us in charge of the government, and a plan that doesn't shift very much for investment, is going to mean a wall of money coming into this country from around the world.
I mean, already that is just absolute nonsense. It's been said by quite a few people on the right wing, but actually millionaires, i.e. the people that do invest in the country, are all going away. This isn't some speculation, by the way. This is statistics directly from private wealth management funds. They predict that 9,500 millionaires are expected to leave the UK throughout this year, and that is more than double last year's figures. No, the writing was on the wall that Labour would come in. The idea that private investment is going to come to the UK is frankly fantasy. I went through Labour's manifesto. Their plan is for every £1 of government money spent, there's £3 of private investment. How are they going to do that? Invest in green markets where the bubble is currently popping. I can't think of a stupider way to say I have no idea what is going on in the real world.
You look at the chaos going on the continent, particularly in France. You look at the chaos likely ahead in the United States. And suddenly, for once, for the first time in many of our lives, actually Britain looks like a little haven of peace and stability. And that in itself is going to draw money into this country.
Again, just total nonsense. Especially with America, Trump's economic record was great. He grew the country, people were generally happy with their economic situation. To say that chaos is going to come over in America is frankly absurd. France, it might be a little different because Le Pen is a little bit more to the left on economics than the rest of the populists, but France has always been pretty left-wing on things like that, so I can't imagine that's going to cause chaos either. This honeymoon period is going to last months if they are lucky. I don't think we are going to see a 10-year Labour government. I'm saying it here right now. In fact, I've said it quite a few times before, but I'm saying it on video now. I don't think this is even going to last 5 years. I think we're going to see an early election, and I think that Labour are going to only have one term here. And you may ask, well, why do I think that? Well, one, because of all the wokery that they're doubling down on, which I'm not even done with that yet. But secondly, day one into winning an election, if you're already making excuses for why you can't put your economic platform forward, then what the hell do you expect? At least the Tories under David Cameron admitted that austerity was going to be necessary. Labour have been doing their best to avoid saying that. So Rachel Reeves has issued a damning assessment of the state of the UK's finances. The new Chancellor said she was inheriting a depleted economy from the Tories that would create a challenge for the new Labour government. There is not a huge amount of money there, Ms Reeves told the BBC. I know the scale of the challenge I inherit. Ms Reeves said that she would lean on the private sector to cover the shortfall. Private sector investment is the lifeblood of a successful economy. Well, that's true. We need to unlock private sector investment. Well, from what I could see from their manifesto, they do not have very good plans for that. So as I say, expect the economic miracle that people on the left are expecting from Labour to fall very short. So that's about all we can say on the economics for now, because we have not had a new budget yet. But unless they actually go for a 2010 style type of austerity, I can't see the economy running as smoothly as they want it to. Anyway, one thing I can guarantee for now is that they are definitely doubling down on the woke, because Haryan was loving the fact that we now have 264 female MPs, though she says woman, and it's a chance to work cross-party on women's priorities. The Fawcett Society will convene a meeting for all women MPs, enabling them to embark on process of setting up powerful women's caucus, childcare, violence against women, equal pay. Now is the time for change. Effectively, yes, they are still doubling down on these special interest groups, running Parliament and running the quangos. In short, Liz Truss was right. I don't know why anyone is still celebrating the fact that we are getting many women MPs. This is obviously going to happen. They are being pushed into Parliament, or pushed in at least to candidate positions. Anyway, when it does come to celebrating these female MPs, even when they are trying to seriously make a point about, oh, we're excited for this new government, civil servants, the Home Office specifically, managed to make a great faux pas. For 242 years, the Home Secretary has kept the country safe. Today marks the start of a new chapter as the Home Office welcomes Yvette Cooper MP, the new Home Secretary. The implication of this tweet being, oh, yeah, for 242 years, the Home Office Secretary has been there to keep the country safe. Well, this new chapter, they're going to do something different. Obviously, I'm not going to be as harsh as to think they are actually saying that they are not going to be keeping the country safe, but the faux pas here must be noted. This is simply just funny. I don't know how this tweet was put out without proofreading. Anyway, the penultimate section of this video is going to be covering the fifth column that we are currently having trouble with, and that is slowly becoming more powerful and therefore causing more trouble in the UK. So powerful that I think over the next 3 to 5 years, we are even going to start seeing left-wingers say, maybe the right were right about this. And this all stems from the lovely Jess Phillips. After winning the election in Birmingham Yardley, where there is a rather large Muslim cohort, where there is an independent running to hopefully try and get that Muslim vote, at the count there was, to put it politely, a bit of an uproar, and this is the entire clip.
She's just scraped in.
Indeed.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
So we're going to continue with the class that we had during the campaign.
Yes, it was rather infamous that Birmingham Yardley was having issue, as I say, with this cohort, and obviously it came to a head when Jess Phillips yet again won, and she won by a small margin of somewhere under 1,000 votes. And this clip only gets worse. And they won't stop heckling, and it ends up with Jess Phillips having to say this.
This election has been... Can you throw them out?
Yes, this cohort, for lack of a better term, cannot act in a civil manner after having lost in a fair and free election. Naturally, Jess Phillips was interviewed many times about this, for once, genuine intimidation, and I want you to bear in mind that when it came to the whole issue with Carl Benjamin and his unfortunate rape joke, she had no problem calling out exactly who this person was, and exactly what group she thought they represented. So let's get into this clip then.
It was an absolutely horrible campaign, the most aggressive, most intimidatory, not just of me, but of the people in my constituency, people being intimidated.
Sounds horrible, I agree. We should not have intimidation when it comes to election campaigns. We should have absolutely zero tolerance on violence or the threat of violence, absolutely anywhere in the UK.
People being told that God will judge them if they vote a certain way, which is an electoral offence.
Oh, interesting. Why didn't you go to the police about this? And assuming you did go to the police about this, why didn't they do anything about it, Jess Phillips? You have just accused your political opponents of committing an electoral offence. Why are you only mentioning this in interviews? Why are you not putting in official complaints about this? Why are you not making police reports? Are you, assuming you actually have done all that anyway, why have the police done nothing about it? Either you're lying or there's something else going on here, Jess, isn't there?
Some of my activists had their tyres slashed on election day. I had one day where a young woman who was out leafleting, and they're filming her and screaming like genocide in her face.
Oh, so there was also electoral intimidation going on. You know, threatening and intimidating your political opponents yet again. Have the police done anything about this, Jess? Because you seem to just be coming on to interviews to say these things are happening. Nothing's obviously going to get done unless you get the police involved. And if they have been involved, Jess, why has nothing been done?
In my constituency, the humiliation was always at the hands of women, by men to women, and they wish to drive content. Like, that's what our politics has become.
So Jess Phillips's whole argument here is men were filming women to humiliate them, to intimidate them, to then share that around social media to encourage other men to do this, effectively so that women are driven out of politics, despite the fact that she's brought up the whole genocide thing. Again, this is going to be a big problem that we have over the next 5 years, thanks to Labour. They are not at all going to address the actual issue. There is a massive elephant in this room following Jess Phillips about, but the problem is if she tries to bring it up, she might lose votes over it. Because bringing up the frankly obvious fact that this was a Muslim cohort intimidating women in the election is obviously a horrible thing. And saying that, I'm going to be the bad guy, by the way. I'm in a couple of years' time, that might actually be illegal to say. Which is quite crazy when you think about it. Pointing out what is obviously a truthful problem, in that we have a fifth column currently in the United Kingdom where they struggle to play by the civil rules we have within these elections. Not only will barely anything get done about it, but also it will be illegal to even point out that there is a problem, unless you put it in the way Jess Phillips has put it, which is, oh, this was actually patriarchy, rather than what it actually is, which is a Muslim culture coming over and causing massive problems here. There is no doubt that Jess Phillips admits that this is a problem, but if you say it's say a Muslim problem, or if that's from Pakistan, say a Pakistani problem, something like that, obviously you're naming a protected group. That is illegal to say. You can't say that. So they would rather have people arrested, and I mean, I could go into the whole going to jail thing, but it sounds like they've put someone in charge of prisons who actually wants a third of prisoners released, so I'm not actually at risk of going to jail. But anyway, they'd rather sentence someone who is pointing out the specifics of this problem rather than actually deal with the specifics of the problem. That's going to be the legacy of the next 5 years when it comes to this specific problem. So things are probably going to get worse because of that. It depends how much they are going to do about actually reducing immigration. And the thing is that this problem has got so bad that actually they have 4 independent members of Parliament now who were directly put in that into Parliament on a ticket of, I will make sure that we no longer support Israel, and in fact we support Gaza. I say 4, but obviously 5 pillars have put a 5th down as Jeremy Corbyn, because to be fair, he is pro-Palestine, but he is obviously being put there for a much wider variety of reasons. So we officially have 4 people in Parliament whose entire reason for being there is for a very, very short-term reason. One that most native Brits might have at a push in their top 5. If that. No. This is an important issue, again for a very specific cohort of people. And the fact they've chosen to represent them is showing what a massive issue we have at the moment. Their politics to them did not matter, it was just they're pro-Palestine, well, they get my vote, they must be good. That is what an awful lot of, frankly, foreign people from the Middle East will be thinking. And it's a massive problem that is just an elephant in the room. No one's talking about this. Everyone would rather talk about, oh, isn't it great that Labour have a massive landslide? I feel great now. Well, they lost some of that due to these 5 seats. Obviously, Jeremy Corbyn, you can say, is on the left of the Labour Party anyway. But these other 4 completely foreign actors now working in our domestic politics, and all they really care about is foreign affairs. This is a broken system in practice. And I think it's worth going through how exactly some of these independents celebrated. Obviously, we don't care about Jeremy Corbyn. We all really know what he's like. But here is the independent candidate, Adnan Hussein in Blackburn, joyously celebrating his victory of the election.
Free, free Palestine! Free, free Palestine! Free, free Palestine! Free, free Palestine! Palestine will be free!
Yeah, first things first, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. I have made the argument so many times that that is effectively a war cry, and something I would be happy to see completely banned from being said in the streets of Britain, but nothing's going to be done about this, because, again, they are going to do more to make criticising this sort of thing racist and a punishable offence in British courts than actually doing anything about this 5th column growing in Britain. That is by no means the worst clip of these independents. We will now move on to the MP for Shrewsbury, Iqbal Mohammed, making his victory speech.
That have been mentioned by Hamza and the sister and everybody else. Go home, find every brand and every product that has been supporting Israel and Zionism from the beginning of time and throw it away. Throw it away. Put the list on your fridge. Tell your children when you go to the shop to buy sweets, do not buy this and do not buy that. That is the least we can do. Every day, every week, every month, write to your politicians.
To translate into what this will mean in domestic policy, he is probably going to try, as one MP, or I guess a cohort of 5, there's not an awful lot they can actually do. Ironic given that I'm happy with Reform's results, but we'll ignore that for now. This is going to translate into, I want to put forward some bills that are going to result in the banning of whatever list he wants to put up on the fridge. These people care a hell of a lot more about the goings-on in the Middle East than they do with domestic politics. Why they don't go then over to the Middle East to actually, fight for Palestine? I don't know. But this is absolutely not something we should ever have allowed to infect our politics, and especially our Parliament. Parliament is genuinely sacred to the Brits, and it is genuinely being bastardised with these independents. Now, it's a free and fair election. These areas obviously voted these people in. There's not an awful lot we can do about that. But the problem's a lot wider than banning these people standing in Parliament, is what I'm trying to say. We can't do that. It is sacred. We need that part of the system to be fair and stick as it is. However, these people have been allowed into the country after decades of effective open borders. These people have been allowed to vote under the Commonwealth Act. Anyone who comes from an ex-Commonwealth country has the right to vote in this country. That needs to be gotten rid of. You can only vote if you have a British passport. Well, even then, John, I know you don't have a British passport, but you know what I mean. You are an official British citizen, and get rid of dual citizenships as well. The issue we have with elections at the moment is that they are very unfair on the people who, one, are British natives anyway, and two, people who have come over here and actually integrated to become British citizens. It's not fair on them. Their vote should, well, they should have a vote. And people who haven't tried to integrate and haven't got their British citizenship shouldn't. That is obviously the fair way to go, but nobody's talking about that apart from Reform. But as I say, what's the white pill from this? Well, the issue's becoming a hell of a lot more blatant. We've had Jess Phillips openly say that people like this have been slashing her activist tyres, intimidating them, basically causing what happened to Lindsay Hoyle to go against parliamentary procedure, but put it on steroids. Things are getting nasty. And you'd hope that that is people touching the stove and going, wow, something definitely needs to be done about this. And effectively, the more that is suppressed, the more it will come out in one big story, one way or another. It should already have been huge when David Armes was murdered by an Islamist, but we all seem to have forgotten that. I don't know how many officials, whether they be candidates or MPs, need to be murdered before this is taken seriously. Because unless something is done about this quickly, forcefully and soon, the problem's only going to get worse. And amazingly, Jess Phillips is correct. It will be women mainly at the receiving end of this. Anyway, to finish this video off, we are going to react to probably the biggest white pill that we have of the night. Tory MPs who have lost their seat, who were on the dry side of things, the base types, can now go fully mask off. Now, don't have the issue of needing to look good for Parliament, for their electorate. They can effectively say what they feel and be quite rude about it, quite frankly. So here is Steve Baker, the enough is enough man, finally going full-on free market to the face of people who have caused problems economically in our country in the past. Take it away.
I think you got it wrong too. Look, in the end, I got into politics over three matters: that your government rode an enormous credit boom within which the money supply tripled, leading into the global financial crisis, a massively manufacturing injustice.
You love it. Again, Steve Baker has been saying these things in Parliament, it just never gets news coverage. The man is a total free marketeer and a big brain understander of monetary policy. Yes, increasing the monetary supply 3 times without increasing productivity, yes, that causes a massive amount of artificial credit into the economy and obviously then helped cause the 2008 crash. They then increased the money supply even more to bail them out.
I got into politics because of extraordinary rendition, our complicity in it, in torture, which you were party to.
Yeah, implying war crimes in Iraq, yep. Perfectly fine, perfectly valid. Glad that he's now able to say this now he's out of Parliament.
And I got into it because your party brought forward the Lisbon Treaty to avoid having a referendum on the Constitution for Europe. And if only you'd had a referendum on the Constitution for Europe or the Lisbon Treaty, we'd never have got here, Ed.
Yep, Steve Baker getting both barrels out, aiming it straight at Ed Balls and saying, you are one of the biggest reasons that the country is in a complete stagnant mess. You are the reason that no one has trust in politics. I hope to never see you again. And Ed Balls, I think, gives one of the worst retorts I think I can imagine.
Goodness me, Mr. Baker, I have to say, you know, it's 2024. You've just lost your seat in your constituency. You've sort of thought of 3 different things which were all happened over 17 years ago.
I mean, it's typical stupid journalist answer. He was explaining why he got into politics in the first place. He was asked, how do you feel about losing your seat? Well, obviously sad. So he just went on a tangent to say, I got into politics in the first place because you were way worse than I was. And instead of any introspection, which why would you expect any, obviously he just tries to fire back saying, haha, you just lost an election. As if Ed Balls didn't lose the last election he stood in.
Are you maybe in denial?
No, not at all. I mean, you know as well as I do that these big treaty changes with the European Union and indeed the monetary system post-Bretton Woods is 50 years old, it's now breaking down.
This quickfire economic analysis alone is reason enough to follow Steve Baker post his time in Parliament. This is very good economic analysis and he has clearly got no qualms with directing his blame directly at people who are complicit in it. He's even bringing up 50-year-old economic monetary policy that has had no proper challenge, and he wants to do that in Parliament, and he couldn't properly because of all sorts of things, because of bigger issues, because he's just one MP. He was in Cabinet for a bit, but obviously couldn't do an awful lot as Northern Ireland Minister, and was obviously couldn't do much with Liz Truss because he was in there for a month. We missed out bad not having Steve Baker as Chancellor of the Exchequer, I guarantee that.
And I'm afraid you and George are as bad as each other on this particular score. Neither of you ever really understood monetary economics. And I've wasted a lot of breath in the House of Commons trying to explain to George in particular what was going on and the kind of injustice it was manufacturing. Well, much good did it do everybody. And now with the nation seething with a sense of injustice, economic injustice, of course they are. They can't afford house prices if they're young. Why? Because cheap credit was pumped into a housing market in which supply was constrained by planning laws, about which neither of you did anything.
It's amazing. George Osborne just has a grin on his face that entire time, because George Osborne, again, been saying this for ages, basically left-wing. It's what's been happening with an awful lot of ex-Tory and Labour politicians. They go off, they make friends with each other, and they make podcasts to agree on 90% of things. Those 90% of things are the Westminster centrist opinions of we need to be internationalist and just keep giving out gibs, but not do it in an obvious money printing way. In fact, we'll do it with quantitative easing and give it extra steps. Steve Baker is now out of that bubble and is, I imagine, not going to go in any way woke on that sort of thing. I think he's been radicalised by his time in Parliament, realised that he has said a lot of stupid things in the past, and I hope he joins a think tank with, I don't know, maybe someone like Liz Truss or Kwasi Kwarteng, and still continues his political agenda of getting away from current monetary nonsense towards putting forward policy that will increase productivity, increase growth, and make people not feel like they've been in a stagnant economic mess for the last 50 years, as he says. Just an excellent piece of television, the best thing to come out of election night by far, hence I'm sharing it with you.
So, you know, at last, as I say, I'm free, thank God.
This is the important part. I think his plan over the next 5 years will be do stuff in a think tank, come up with policy ideas, be a bit of an Hayek type figure, and be a very important supporting role for the next right-wing government or party, whether that be Reform or Conservatives. But best part is he doesn't even stop there.
And not for the country, which is now going to have an absolutely miserable time under a Labour government, which, by the way, candidates have said that austerity, George's austerity, was a choice. Well, I always accepted it wasn't a choice, it was necessary. But what we're now going to find is poor Rachel Reeves, who seems to look more miserable every time I see her on TV, is going to have to do austerity. And she's going to have to do austerity with these Labour MPs who all told the public it was a choice. It's going to be an absolute circus.
I just had to let that clip play out. I don't even care if this video gets hit with copyright. I had to let that play out. This government is going to be an absolute disaster when it comes to culture. When it comes to economics, not much is going to change. Things are going to stay stagnant. Efforts to make GB Energy and things like that, so, you know, nationalise the railways, they're going to fall flat on their face. If your plan is to spend on nationalising industries, which, okay, the contracts run out and then all you have to really pay for is running costs, you can't do that when your Chancellor is saying there isn't an awful lot of money there. What happened with David Cameron's government was they had a note from the previous Chancellor saying there is no money. Literally, there is no money. And instead of doing austerity like they promised, they just kept spending at the same rate. That is something that then continued for the next 14 years, and wouldn't you know it, when you are spending the same amount of money when there already isn't any and not improving productivity in the public sector, wow, there's no money again. And Steve Baker hit the absolute nail on the head. This is due to our monetary policy, this is due to the money supply constantly being increased via quantitative easing and causing people to not be able to afford houses unless they make great sacrifices. I had to move to Wales, for example. People I know have bought houses elsewhere are in, say, Liverpool for incredibly cheap, by the way. Other places is London, but they couldn't have done that without the help from their parents, of course. People feel stuck, and they feel stuck because of the economic orthodoxy that has been put in place for the last 50 years by Steve Baker's estimates, but certainly since at the very least, 2008. Well, economic orthodoxy will continue, we will see absolutely no improvement. Hopefully, finally, people will see that on economics, Tories and Labour have been doing the same thing for the past few decades. We will finally move to something like what Liz Truss was saying. Will it happen? I don't know, but I would be shocked if things carry on as they are next election. Speaking of Liz Truss, obviously she lost her seat. I wish her the best in whatever she chooses to do next. I would be shocked if it is, again, nothing to do with joining a think tank. I reckon she will still be involved in politics. I wouldn't be shocked if she comes back as a candidate next time. Anyway, with the explanation of how Clown World is going to look over the next 5 years, I do hope that you are not completely blackpilled. I don't think there's massive reason to be, other than obviously the immediate problems. Obviously there's a lot more to talk about when it comes to the cabinet and other issues, but I do a newscast every other Tuesday over on the Worcester Club, link down in the description. If you are interested in more focus on the cabinet and things like that, please join us on Tuesday evening for that. In the meantime, though, that is everything I had for you today. So, once again, little bit of shilling. Obviously, I spent 10 hours on the stream for the election night. Very good having everyone on there. Very good to have you all in the chat. Thanks again, especially once again to that crime guy. I hope to be able to do more streams like that in the future. This Friday I will be doing a stream with my girlfriend to take our minds off politics. We will be covering animal stories and raising some money for charity. She has found an independent hedgehog saver on TikTok and she wants to give money to help save the hedgehogs. So please do join us there. It's either going to be on this channel or on Tash's. Either way, join the Discords down below. We will be announcing it on there. Follow me on Twitter. I will be announcing it there. And please do donate where you can. If you enjoy the work I do on YouTube here, please do like, favourite, subscribe, etc, etc, do all that good stuff. If you would like to help me out further, obviously you can super chat, super thanks in videos or super chat in live streams. You can become a member where, to be honest, it's going to start being worth it because I think I'm going to have to start putting certain things behind the paywall. Mainly laughing at the Guardian things because I let my mouth run off a bit in those streams. But that's about as far as the incentive goes. It is mainly there to say if you think I have earned your donation, then please do give, but absolutely no pressure aside from that. For now, naturally, I will be trying to make 2 to 3 videos a week. As far as I can tell, that is going to be a lot easier because I think there's going to be a lot to talk about with this incoming Labour government. Obviously join the Worcester Club. We're hoping to do more in real life events through that. Hopefully eventually we'll even have live regional variations and things like that we can all get to. If we get enough people there, we'll even start making paid membership where obviously you will get plenty of benefits for a small donation to the Worcester Club. We want to make it quite a big thing. If you want to just have a normal life and meet other normal people who have similar interests to you, that's the place to do it, because it's difficult to do it in this world of Twitter and social media. Yes, I know it's social media, but the emphasis is to meet up in real life, so there's the option there. Anyway, that's all shilling done, so with that, once again, thank you very much for watching, and until next time, goodbye.